I totally went live and forgot to have my mic set up, but I'm here now, ready to go. And let's talk about this Karen Reed trial. So I know the title says explosive. There's somebody in the comments always like explosive. Yeah, more like pathetic. It's like, look, no. There was some explosive moments during cross examination. Look, there's a lot going on with this trial. There's been something over 100 different motions filed and argued in this trial. This is trial number 2. There's already been years of content related to this case put out there into the atmosphere, and documentaries and YouTube videos and people getting brought up on charges and all kinds of other stuff going on. This is trial number 2. It feels really shitty that we're here for a million different reasons. Namely because, just going back to the end of trial number 1, it really appeared like the jury was hung up on a singular issue, not related to whether or not Reed was guilty of murder. But the judge failed to poll the jury, and it turns out she wasn't legally obligated to do that. And that's how we end up here at trial number 2, which is essentially a second bite of the apple, which is kind of the shittiest thing about our legal system. The fact that you can have a full-on mistrial, like you have a burden of proof. And then people say that, oh, the burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt. And they say it's the most difficult standard to meet, which it is. But then the thing is, if you mistrial, you get a full-on second crack at it. A full-on second crack. And they just basically had to redo everything again. And I think that McCabe's testimony in this trial is significant because her testimony this second time around was a lot less erratic. It was a lot more composed. Her story largely remained the same. The reasons why I thought that Karen Reed was going to get an acquittal the first go around was, number one, first and primary, the medical evidence, not a shred of it, supported the injuries sustained by John O'Keefe as it related to him being run over by a car. However you want to phrase that. People get hung up on, well, he wasn't run over, he was struck by. Well, he was going 10 miles an hour, not 20 miles an hour. Well, she was 75% accelerator was pressed down. However it was, his injuries were not consistent with what the prosecution stated. And that was made abundantly clear in trial number 1. And I thought that it was going to be enough to form the basis for reasonable doubt. But before we ever got there, we had Jen McCabe's testimony, her timeline of events, her selective memory, her failure to elicit the fact that, according to her, Karen Reed gave a full-on confession at the scene of the crime, that she failed, although given like a dozen opportunities, to alert the court to the fact that Karen Reed said, I hit him. Just slipped her mind. Just out with the cold, I guess. What are you going to do about that? For me, this trial, I was most interested in obviously how the medical, there's other parts of the case. I don't have time to break down the entire thing today, but we can't just ignore that McCabe's testimony just happened. And I wanted to go through some bits. Now, look, she testified over the course of a couple of days, something like 8 hours on the stand. I'm not going to replay the entire thing. There's plenty of other YouTubers that are live streaming this. I wish I had time to do that. I just don't. But what I've caught from this McCabe case, and I'm going to go on another live stream in about an hour to talk about this case. Well, her testimony is critical because I thought it was one of like 3 points of reasonable doubt that you could have elicited in the first go around. Now, look, this is her timeline according to her testimony. On the evening of January 28th, her and a group of friends, McCabe, her husband, other family members, they spend time at this watering fountain, the Waterfall Bar and Grill. That's where they all go. Sometime at around 11 p.m. And look, this is according to her. This is not the official timeline. Approximately 11 p.m., John O'Keefe and Karen Reed get there. They're amongst friends. They're drinking. Karen Reed is legitimately getting shit-faced. McCabe recalls O'Keefe and Reed arriving around that time. They party, they drink, they're having a good time, whatever. They're at some point in the early morning hours of January 29th, approximately 12:14 a.m. to 12:45 a.m., there is this text message exchange between McCabe and O'Keefe. They had exchanged several texts, including messages such as "here?" ? In other words, McCabe asking if O'Keefe was there. Pull behind me. Where are you? Indicating that she had made efforts to meet up at the Fairview location. She mentions at some point in the early morning hours of January 29th, she discovers O'Keefe. Her, Karen Reed, and others discovered him unresponsive in the snow at the Fairview location of the house. All of that. Frantic scene. She testifies that Reed exclaimed, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. And there's, all the different iterations of that. Stating basically that it sounded to her like she had basically confessed to running him over. It was her belief that that's what that meant, that Karen Reed hit him and left him for dead in the snow, I guess. And then she claims on testimony, which has never, ever, ever made sense to me, never, ever made sense, that Karen Reed somehow, in her frantic state, not being able to form a coherent sentence, repeatedly yelling over and over again, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, somehow magically had the foresight to alert McCabe that, hey, do me a favor. I just need you to do a Google search for me. I want you to Google how long does it take to die in the cold. She tells McCabe to do that. Karen Reed tells McCabe to do that, allegedly. And so McCabe does do that. And the way that she does it with the famous typo, pass long, die in cold, that whole rigmarole. Emergency responders arrive at the scene. There was a 911 call placed at approximately 11:23 a.m. where there was a report of a man unresponsive in the snow. The man, of course, we know is O'Keefe. She talks about, she being McCabe, contacting multiple people. She called her husband. She called Carrie Roberts. She called Peggy O'Keefe, who was a district attorney's advocate. She called Brian Albert, who was the homeowner, whose lawn O'Keefe was found on. She has these shifty memories. On cross-examination, Jackson brilliantly, and this would be like the explosive element of it, at least according to my eyes, impugns her credibility regarding omitted contacts, about her selective memory. And I'm going to go over some of this so you can actually see, not just hear me recite it. Notably not mentioning the explicit confession, I hit him. Never once did she say that to anybody in any of her communications with all of these people. In her grand jury testimony, she had like at least a dozen opportunities, according to Jackson, to recite that very important fact that, oh, by the way, Karen Reed confessed. She said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. And she failed to let everybody know that. There was a group chat discussion after the incident, McCabe acknowledging she was involved with a group chat with Carrie Roberts and others discussing the incident post-discovery of the body, but denies discussing testimony details. The obvious takeaway there being that, look, there was a group chat. They're all going back and forth. They were talking together. They were letting each other know when law enforcement was there. They were getting their story straight and having it change testimony, which is the only reasonable explanation why a fact as important as a stated confession somehow is omitted from every communication she had and her testimony at the grand jury, but after the fact, once she got her story straight, her testimony changed. That to me is an incredible indicator of the smoke of reasonable doubts. Now look, however you want to tie that in, something fishy is up with that. The defense theory is that it wasn't Karen Reed who was responsible for O'Keefe's death. Something happened in that house. Something terrible happened in that house. And without directly implicating people, and they do have theories, obviously, something happened. O'Keefe was gravely injured and dumped in the snow to die. And because they're members of law enforcement, they had the ability to get their story straight, to plant specific evidence, to embellish certain evidence, and to make it look like it was an accident at the hand of Karen Reed. That's essentially the theory. So let's go into some of this testimony. Let's take a listen first to the 911 call from Jennifer McCabe. I'm going to share my screen with you so we can all listen together. Here we go.
Yes, I'm going to come to 314. 314 is over here now. The baby and cat out in the snow. You can't hold on, because you can't get it snow. You can't get it snow, okay? Yeah, I did that. You have to just stay on. I can keep it.
I know that's really difficult to hear. They're basically admitting the evidence of the 911 call. They're listening to it in court right now.
What's going on? There's a guy unresponsive in the snow. In the snow? Yes, 34, the Alpha resident. Yes, I just pulled up and found it. Okay, 34 Fairview? 34 Fairview, can't map, yes. 911 is on the bullet, where's your emergency? Hello? Yes, I'm sorry, can you come to 34 Fairview Road in Houston? 34 Fairview? Yes, there's a man unresponsive in the snow. Okay, and he's gonna get here, okay? Okay, what's going on? Is he face down? We just flipped him over. Okay. And who's that in the background? Is that someone related? That's his girlfriend, he was still on the feet. Okay, how old is he? John is 46 years old. 46, how long has he been outside? I don't know. I don't know. He got out of the car and it could have been a couple of hours. Is he Terry? Is he? I don't know.
So you could kind of hear. I believe that that's Karen Reed in the background, kind of like freaking out. What you don't hear her say is, "I hit him. I hit him. I hit him." And look, fair play. She's like on the phone with 911. She's trying to relay information. I'm not sure how perceptive she is of what Karen Reed is saying, especially if it's not intelligible. But the point is that we can hear it right now. I don't hear her saying anything like, "I hit him." I hear her freaking out because she just discovered her boyfriend laying in the snow, seemingly dead, when she wasn't expecting to find that. Or if you want to go the other route, well, I don't know what other route you would go. If you believe she killed her, then, you think she's faking it. But he doesn't seem like she was expecting to find his body like that. That is a genuine reaction of distress and freaking out in a moment where you would blurt out unintelligible things like that. I don't hear the "I hit him" stuff is all. And granted, that she's not saying that this is where she said it. All I'm saying is I'm trying to pay attention to Reed in the background. Obviously, McCabe is over here giving information. I'm just trying to make it all make sense.
Okay, can you just try asking? I know it's tough, but we already have the fire department going. I just got to know. Is he breathing? It doesn't seem to be breathing. Okay, do they know how to do CPR? Do they want to test it? Yes, he's got to do CPR. No, I guess he's gone. Okay, they don't feel comfortable doing so? No, I think he's passed away. Okay. All right, we have the fire department and the police department on the way. If everyone's declining CPR, then I'll hang up with you, and if anything changes, you can give us a call back. Where are you guys outside? I'm right up front of the car. I know, I'm on the phone with the interviewers. I know. Honey, I know. Kelly, you gotta get off of me. Kelly, you gotta get off.
You got to get off of him. You know, I don't know. I've been covering true crime cases for a few years now. I've been alive for 44 years. I've been a lawyer for 11 years. I've been a criminal defense attorney. I've worked on multiple murder cases. Usually when the suspect is faking remorse, they're not jumping on the dead body, screaming unintelligible things. It's usually a lot more weird than that. It's less flowing. It's more staccato, to borrow a term from music. It's not what you would gather is going on in the background, where Karen Reed is literally being told to get off of the body. She's freaking out. She's screaming unintelligible things. McCabe appears to be trying to console, I guess, while relaying information to 911. And at no point does she ever offer a confession in this recording.
You know if there's any alcohol or drugs involved? He texted out, they've been out drinking? Yes, but I'm talking hours about maybe, and I think I don't know how long it's been. Okay, is there any bleeding or anything, maybe in his head out? Yes, possibly, I think he's bleeding in the face. Okay, bleeding from the face, all right. Yeah. How big the pool of blood is, if there is any?
Now, look, detractors of Karen Reed would say that, well, yeah, she didn't know he was dead. She also didn't know that she hit him because she was too drunk. She was too drunk to know. That doesn't mean that she didn't run him over. Fine, you're right about that. But there's other evidence. I go all the way back to trial number 1. And what I expect is going to come out in trial number 2, which is the lack of corresponding medical evidence that leads to a finding that those injuries sustained by O'Keefe, that are strange injuries, no less, there is not a scientific reason why he would have had the injuries he had, where somebody could have come to the conclusion that he was struck by a car leading to his imminent death. There isn't. Not based on the prosecution story. Whatever cause of death, it wasn't getting struck by a car. That, to me, along with this, and I mean, not just these two things, but they paint a solid picture of reasonable doubt. That's why we have a mistrial. I believe that jury in trial number 1 was prepared to acquit her on the murder charges. This judge just failed to poll them. I mean, Jesus Christ, you have the trial of the century in your courtroom, and the jury declares that, you know, they're caught up. They're about to hang. The jury's about to hang, and you don't poll the jury. You don't do everything in your power to prevent a hung jury. Now we're back here for trial number 2. What an incredibly inefficient way to run a courtroom. It's so frustrating. Either way, here we are. So let's move to this bit of testimony. There's a discussion of the group chat between McCabe and Carrie Roberts and gang. They ask McCabe when was the last time he spoke with Carrie Roberts before his testimony today, and then she says, did you discuss anything in that conversation with her prior to testimony? Have you and Miss Roberts ever discussed anything about one of your testimonies? She gives this, and then her answer is gripping. Here it is. Let me just pull this up for you. Let me stop that one and share this one. Oh, would I have it up here twice? Here we go.
Time you spoke with Carrie.
By the way, in terms of trial lawyers, Mr. Jackson is one of the best that I've ever seen. Honestly, he's right up there with Johnny Cochran. He is absolutely skilled at the way that he handles cross-examination, the way that he argues points. He's fiery where he needs to be fiery. He's made a concerted effort in trial number 2 from trial number 1. If you notice back in trial number 1, he was very much a bully of McCabe. This time around, he acknowledges maybe that was a mistake, maybe it wasn't. But you can't just go around bullying witnesses. And so he makes a concerted effort to dial back. but his ability to cross-examine, I don't know if any of you guys have ever done like a mock trial or try to cross-examine anybody. It is one of the most difficult things to do as an attorney because you literally have to play the witness as a puppet. You want them to tell the story that you want them to tell, but they're a hostile witness. So how do you do that? You do that with leading questions. You paint them into corners. You have to trap them so that the only answer that they can give is the yes or no version of what you want them to say yes or no to. It's incredibly difficult to do. And Jackson has just mastered it. Seriously, this is a master class, this entire trial of how he's conducted himself.
Carrie Roberts before your testimony today.
She called me last night.
What did y'all discuss?
She asked if my daughters were going to be staying home from school today because her daughter would possibly join them.
Did you discuss anything having to do with your testimony?
Not my testimony, no.
Did you discuss anything in that conversation with her prior testimony?
No.
Are you aware that she testified last week?
Yes.
Did you discuss anything after that, after she testified with her about her testimony?
No.
We know that through her testimony that you had a conversation with her the morning that she testified.
Yes.
Right? Did you discuss what you anticipated to be her testimony in that conversation before she testified?
No.
Have you and Ms. Roberts ever discussed anything about either one of your testimonies, either in the last proceeding or in anticipation of this proceeding?
No.
So for the entirety of the last year, even though you both went through a proceeding last year where you both testified under oath and it was highly, highly publicized, neither one of you, your good friend Carrie Roberts and you, have ever discussed either of your testimonies between that time and this time.
No, we've discussed the case and we've discussed what happened that moment, the moments of the morning, but we have not discussed testimony.
Okay.
I will tell you what, the only trial attorney, the only jury trial I've ever lost in my 11-year career was a criminal case where it was a cross-exam similar to this, where one of my witnesses admitted on the stand that she had met up with the defendant who was out of custody, and they went over what she was going to say in court the next day. And then the jury took that as, well, then she can't be trusted. This whole thing is a sham, and they found my guy guilty. And up to that point, we were, in my eyes, we were winning the case. There was reasonable doubt of bounds until we got to the moment where her credibility was shattered. Because, and unbeknownst to me, I didn't tell her to do that. I certainly didn't tell my client to have any communications with potential witnesses, but they did it anyway, and it came out. And imagine my shock and surprise when it came out during her testimony that she met up with my clients at his house the night before to discuss her testimony. It's one of those oh shit moments, the biggest of my career, and it led to the only loss of a jury trial that I've ever had thus far. And so what she's testifying to is incredibly, incredibly important right now. Her answers matter because her credibility is directly in the line of fire by Mr. Jackson's questions. He's asking her without asking her, did you guys get your story straight? Did you guys discuss this case and discuss the finer details of your stories before you came to court to testify? That's essentially what he's getting at. To answer this question on the screen, so the defense is saying he never entered the house. No, that is not what the defense is saying. The defense is not only saying that he went into the house, but he went up and down like 3 flights and stairs a couple of times, likely got into a fight while he was in the house. Something catastrophic happened, ending in his demise. And they left him out to die in the cold because he was already gone. And they try to cover it up. And that's why they're getting their story straight. And they try to pin it on whom they deem to be crazy Karen Reed because of her jealousy issues and all kinds of other stuff. It's a wild case. So Mercurial, if this is your first time examining it, you're gonna want to start from the very beginning because this case gets wild. Now let me continue with this.
So let's break that down for a second. I'm talking about, because the timing matters. I'm just asking at this point, if you'll bear with me, just the year from last year at a different proceeding
Mhm.
to this year, you have discussed this case
Yes,
with Ms. Roberts,
many times, yes.
and you've discussed the specifics of her memory, which would be reflected in her testimony, correct?
We talked about what happened that morning.
So you were talking about what she remembers happening that morning, correct?
No, what happened that morning.
Okay, so not to put too fine a point on it, Ms. McCabe,
Mhm.
but if you ask me what I had for dinner last night, it's my memory of what I had for dinner last night. Would you agree with that?
Sustained.
Did you talk about her perception of what happened that morning during the last year?
We've talked about what has happened, yes.
Okay, so I'm trying to break it down between you and Ms. Roberts. You've discussed her perceptions and her memory of what happened, as well as, and separate and apart from, your memory and your perceptions, correct?
Correct.
So there have been circumstances in which you and Ms. Roberts have compared, by definition, what she remembers versus what you remember, correct?
I wouldn't say compare.
Now let's move to well, what would you say in terms of what you've discussed and why?
I would say that we've both talked about what we've discussed, but it wasn't like a comparison. We weren't comparing anything.
All right, look, man. Everybody knows what it's like. Well, if you have siblings and you guys are both in trouble, and then you get reprimanded or yelled at by your mom or your dad, and then the siblings are left to themselves, they both have conversations, and they both talk about compare and contrast versions of the story. It's not a credible statement for her to say, "Oh no, we talked about the case, but we weren't comparing notes." Well, what in the hell were you talking about for then? It's a moment where, like, look, her credibility was already shot from the first trial. These jurors are not supposed to have recollection of trial number one. But here, she's trying to lead the jury to believe that, yeah, they discussed the case, but they didn't compare and contrast notes. That's the big point that Jackson is trying to make right here. So I'm going to move on. This was day one of her testimony. I'm going to get out of this one, and we're going to go into some other stuff. Whereby, oh boy. Let's go where she discusses the typo. This is day two. And let's take a listen to this. This is the Google search. The Google search. Sorry to leave you up there, Mercurial. All right, here we go.
This is driving to Fairview. She asked, what if...
Actually, before I get there, I want to... No, you know what? Let's continue with that. I'll just take it out of order. It's fine.
If I hit him, could I have hit him? Correct?
Can you tell me the lines?
I'm sorry, lines 23 and 24. Page 201.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I've read it.
She stated, according to you, what if I hit him? Could I have hit him? Correct?
Yes, she did.
Page 202, top of the page, line 1 and 2. Again, in context, this is driving to Fairview before you arrived at Fairview. And she again asked, quote, according to you and your testimony in front of the grand jury, could I have hit him? Correct?
Yes, I see that here as part of my answer.
Then turn to page 208, lines 24 and 25.
I'm sorry, what lines 24 and 25?
Lines 24 and 25, let me know when you've
I've read them, thank
reviewed
you.
those. For context, this is at the scene outside Fairview.
Yes.
And you told those grand jurors under oath, she asked, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? Correct?
Yes.
On page 208, lines 24 and 20, I'm sorry, 208 and 209, going on to page 209, lines 1 through 3. You actually recounted to the grand jurors a conversation that you said my client had with a female EMT standing right there, exactly as you testified to today. Female EMT. You see that?
I do, yes.
And what did you say my client's statements were in front of that female EMT?
In this, I say that she said, could I have hit him? Is he dead?
It's actually, did I hit him?
Oh, sorry, I missed that part. I apologize. Did I hit him? Could I have hit him? Is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead?
And that was at the scene in front of the female EMT, exactly the scene that you're describing. You attributed the 3 statements to my client to today, right?
There was many different times when we were talking to different EMTs, the female EMT, the men, police officers.
May I approach?
Yes.
Yeah, just hold your honor.
Sure.
Ms. McCabe, your full statement at page 208, starting at lines 22 through 25, going on to page 209, down to line 4, was, quote, so there are different, police officers getting statements from us. And at one point I'm standing with Miss Reed and she's saying, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? And there was, I believe, an EMT, a female, standing right next to me, listening to her yelling, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? Is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead? It was pretty much nonstop. That was your testimony in front of the grand jurors, correct?
Yes, it was.
So she gives that testimony in front of the grand jurors. If you guys are wondering, well, what about the EMTs? So she's saying this in front of a bunch of EMTs. Did any EMT hear Karen Reed say that? Timothy Nuttall had testified, he's a Canton firefighter, paramedic, that he heard Karen Reed say, I hit him. He stated he wasn't certain which woman made the statement, but he noted that the woman had blood on her face. There was Officer Stephen Saraf, who had previously testified that Reed had blood on her face after attempting to perform CPR. We know from the 911 call that she was on top of the body. During cross-exam, Alan Jackson had questioned Nuttall about inconsistencies between his trial testimony and his prior statements to investigators. And Nuttall said that he believed that his recollection had not been changed, and that if there were any discrepancies, it was unintentional. He didn't mean it. And so McCabe is not the only one misremembering stuff. There was also another witness, Anthony Flamati, who testified during trial. But I don't recall specifically what he specifically heard Reed say. So there is some indication of EMT corroboration. However, in a case, honestly, that's been being litigated for years, that's been as high profile as this Karen Reed case has been. The grand jury trial or testimony came out some time ago. There's been this running narrative for years now that Karen Reed made that confession. Whether or not anybody ever stated that to any of the investigators is unclear to me as I'm remembering it. But I think that the main issue and the point that Jackson is making is that Why isn't it? Because she offers this full-blown confession in the midst of all this chaos. Nobody thought to write that down. And yet all of a sudden, all of your memories are refreshed. And now you all have the same story that all of a sudden Karen Reed confesses, I hit him. That's kind of where he's going with this.
And that was April 26th, 2022, correct?
Correct.
Not one time, Ms. McCabe, did you utter the phrase, I hit him.
This is the explosive part that I was referring to when contemplating the title of this video.
As it relates to my client in front of that grand jury on April 26th, 2022, did you? Not once.
I'd have to read through the 227 pages.
No. You don't have to read through 227 pages. You remember it now. You remembered it was years ago, back when you were given your statements, when your memory was the freshest. You didn't have to remember it back then. So just answer obviously, I would get objected to. Jackson does it much more skillfully.
Pages to see.
As you sit here today, do you remember ever saying to those grand jurors, she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, in front of a female EMT?
I've spoken to in a few grand juries. What I said specifically at different ones, I don't recall at this moment, but I do know that morning your client said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Do you realize how problematic it is for a witness to say, look, I've been in a lot of these things. I don't remember what I said at every one. I can't speak to giving different stories at these other ones, but I'm telling you right now, she effing said it. Okay, so this is one version of many that you've given. Which are we to believe? And then he's going to argue in closing statements that obviously the one you believe is the one that was most recent, most fresh in mind. Not the one that occurred years after she had corroborated her story, gotten her story straight with all of her co-conspirators. That would get objected to because there's no alleged co-conspirators, but that's his theory of the case. So
3 times, and there was a female EMT there.
You spoke with Trooper Proctor just the same day, right? January 29th.
Yes.
Trooper Proctor was taking notes
Yes.
about your conversation?
Yes, he was.
You reviewed those notes, as a matter of fact, at some point.
I didn't review his notes. I think I've seen a report at one point or another.
On that very day, January 29th, 2022, when you were asked to recount what happened at the scene, who was doing what and who said what, you never told Trooper Proctor that my client said, I hit him either, did you?
Oh, I told him. Yes, I did.
He just leave that out of his report?
I'm not responsible for his report.
No, you're not. But you have read his report.
So again, no comments, Mr. Jackson.
that was not a comment. That was a question. You have read his report, haven't you?
I have seen it before. Yes.
That's kind of the effing point, isn't it? Isn't that the point?
Yes.
All right, let me pause that right there. I'm going to bring this back down to the testimony where McCabe asserts the direct confession. This is her retelling of it. So you've heard all this. I'm doing this a little bit out of order, but it was a moment. This is where she makes the explicit allegation that Karen Reed said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. And I believe this was on direct, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, let me get rid of this. I have way too many tabs open. Okay, here we go. Let me share with you this. So this is critical. This is when she first makes the allegation.
He did.
It's actually, did I hit him?
Oh, sorry, I missed that part. I apologize. Did I hit him? Could I have hit him? Is he dead?
Oh, I apologize. That's the same one that we just listened to, isn't it? And we went through this one. Okay, was it this one? Yeah, this is the one. This is the one. All right, let me get rid of this other stuff then. Sorry, folks. I need a producer in the worst way. I used to have one. Now I don't. I'm doing my best. Here we go.
At the scene and said the phrase, I hit him, I hit him.
I believe this is her on direct examination, and notice how much more congenial and friendly she is.
I hit him. She said it 3 times, very distinctly, according to your testimony, correct?
She did, yes.
Actually, I don't think this is direct. I think this is still cross.
That was so impactful that it had the effect of putting you in some sort of shock and horror. Is that right?
I was in shock the whole morning, but
Yeah, this is where he makes the big point about how he gets her to admit that this is like an incredibly monumental moment of the day. You just found a dead body and you just heard Karen Reed, whether or not you consider her to be a friend, confess to the murder. Wouldn't that have stood out? This is the point he's trying to make.
that statement definitely was a lot.
And that's an incredibly memorable statement for you to have heard and now recount to us in this trial, correct?
Correct.
Something that you wouldn't easily forget or overlook. Is that right?
Something I wouldn't.
Something you would not easily
Correct.
forget or overlook. Is that right?
Correct, yes.
Matter of fact, some might say it's the centerpiece of your testimony.
Objection. Sustained.
So there's that. And then we go on to this. More about her selective memory.
Not one time, Miss McCabe, did you utter the phrase, I hit him, as it relates to my client in front of that grand jury on April 26th, 2022. Did you? Not once.
I'd have to read through the 227.
Yeah, and then we went through that. And then right after that, there was we covered that. The selective memory stuff. Okay. And then there was one more that I wanted to go over. I think it was this one. Let me just make sure. Okay.
This is driving to Fairview. She asked, what if I hit him? Could I have hit him? Correct?
Can you tell me the lines?
I'm sorry, lines 23 and 24. Page 201.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I've read it.
She stated, according to you, what if I hit him? Could I have hit him? Correct?
Yes, she did.
Page 202, top of the page, line 1 and 2. Again, in context, this is driving to Fairview before you arrived at Fairview. And she again asked, quote, according to you and your testimony in front of the grand jury, could I have hit him? Correct?
Yes, I see that here as part of my answer.
Then turn to page 208, lines 24 and 25.
I'm sorry, what lines 24 and 25?
Lines 24 and 25. Let me know when you've
I've read them, thank
reviewed
you.
those. For context, this is at the scene. outside Fairview.
Yes.
And you told those grand jurors under oath, she asked, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? Correct?
Yes.
On page 208, lines 24 and 20, I'm sorry, 208 and 209, going on to page 209, lines 1 through 3. You actually recounted to the grand jurors a conversation that you said my client had with a female EMT standing right there, exactly as you testified to today.
So I was trying to line up the one with the text message. I seem to have wrote down the timestamp, but I think we get the point. Like the whole point of this testimony is her selective memory, like the going back and forth, the group chat text messages. Remember, like the entire point of the defense is there was an accidental death. It was not at the hands of Karen Reed. And when the death occurred, the entire group of people, and where they're going with this is the entire group of people covered up the death. They created a group chat together. They made various communications. Some of those communications got forever erased. One of those cell phones got destroyed on an army base. There was a dog that was there at the house. That dog has been mysteriously disappeared. The house was sold. Everybody gets their stories straight. Their stories wildly differ from what was first going on at the scene of the incident. Jackson's theory is that Karen Reed was set up to take the fall for something that was much more nefarious that went down. And McCabe comes in, and it is it's not the most explicit, it is one of the most explicit pieces of testimony so far that corroborates this idea that there was a cover-up between a group of people. Now, obviously, the trial's not over, and there's a lot more to go. But I just remember this being domino number one, and all of the other pieces fall later on in the trial. And it's kind of going down exactly the same way it went in trial number one. There is subtle differences. I think that the prosecution's case is a little bit more tight with respect to their theory of the case. There's less loose ends. They're more firm in their story. I think that McCabe did a lot better this go around in her testimony than she did the first time. We'll see how the other witnesses hold up to that scrutiny. I'm just saying that McCabe's testimony is one of the most critical pieces of testimony because it sets the building blocks for this idea that the people that were in the Fairview house acted as co-conspirators to cover up a death and pin it on Karen Reed. That's where we're going with it. I think that the jury in trial number one bought it, that there was a cover-up. They were not prepared to convict Reed of murder, maybe other crimes. That was kind of what they were hung up on. But like I said, judge never wanted to pull the jury, so therefore we are here. They appealed the issue. It was they were not successful in their appeal. We're doing this now, so we got to do it. We're here. Mike Who's headphone says, we have no proof the feds have closed the investigation. And that's true. Although I will state this, that I think that the feds have been investigating in or around this case for years now. I feel like having gone through a full-on trial, if they were going to do anything with this case, they would have done it by now. I don't have a definitive document that states that they've closed an investigation. I've not seen that either. I just feel like it has, based on their inaction. But what do I know? Christy says, 6 months after, no mention of it that way. Last year, different statement at trial. Now a year later, and 3 years after the fact, we've got a new statement. Memory doesn't get better with time. Yeah, she's given so many different versions of the story. She said, look, I've been on multiple grand juries, and I've testified at multiple trials now. Her story, she's given multiple versions of the story. That is the key marker to an incredible person, a non-credible person. So there's that. CJ Lorraine says, I think the feds are still watching. They very well might be. I feel like, what do they need true trials? What do they know now that they didn't know the first go around? If they were going to do anything, I just feel like, what are they waiting on? You know? So, folks, that's all I got for you for Karen Reed tonight. But in about 10 minutes, I'm going to be headed to another live stream. I'd put up the link, but they haven't given me the link yet. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to talk some more about this Karen Reed. I got to do that in about 10 minutes. And then right after that, we're going to go into flat at 5 p.m. Pacific time. I hope to see you all there. And again, we're going to be doing, debuting Rob. He's going to be coming and join on the show. Bruce will be there. Brad will be there. Schnitzel will be there. You never know when you might find Anita there. Anita, the internet sleuth. I love you all. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. If you get in trouble, don't talk to the cops. Call me immediately. And I will see you guys all next time. Well, in about an hour or so on Flad. 10 minutes on this other stream that I can't really plug because they haven't sent me the link yet. So I love you folks. Have a wonderful weekend if we don't talk again this afternoon. Bye-bye.